Welcome to the CDA Institute's Geopolitical Update. I'm Josh Malm, Director of Research and Analysis for the Institute, and I'm joined by geopolitical expert Joseph Varner, Deputy Director of the Conference of Defense Associations and former Director of Policy for the Minister of National Defense. In this podcast, Joe will provide his analysis and insights on the most significant geopolitical and international security developments of the week. So grab your headphones and get ready for a concise but comprehensive update on the world's most pressing geopolitical issues. The CDA Institute encourages rigorous debate on national security matters through our events, research, and publications. Joe, great to be with you again for the Geopolitical Update. Can you provide our listeners with a brief overview of what's been happening on the global stage this week? What are the key highlights and trends that we should be aware of before we get into more specifics?
So, three stories this week that are of particular interest are the Iranian threat to kill former U.S. President Donald Trump, Russia and Chinese naval exercises in the South China Sea, and President Putin's increased personal security. U.S. intelligence officials notified the Secret Service about information from a human intelligence source, which was linked to an Iranian assassination plot against Donald Trump. Now, this followed the completely unrelated assassination attempt, or we believe it's completely unrelated, causing security around the former president to be heightened. And officials have said that these reports were not unusual and that they have been receiving information about Iranian assassination plots and attempts against former President Trump since 2020 when he was in office. And the plots are all linked to Iran still wanting payback or revenge for Trump's assassination of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leader, Qasem Soleimani. Iranian foreign ministry spokesmen have said Wednesday that Iran strongly rejects any involvement in the recent armed attack against Trump, and Iran's ambassador to the United Nations called accusations of previous plots to kill Trump unsubstantiated and malicious. But it's pretty well known that Trump is heavily pro-Israel, anti-Iran, having killed the Iranian nuclear deal, and the architect of the Abraham Accords that normalized relations between the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, was on the brink of bringing normalization in Israel-Saudi Arabian relations. And in fact, the whole closeness of Saudi Arabia and Israel to coming to terms and normalizing relations may have been in part what spawned the surprise Hamas attacks of October 7th at Iran's behest. Trump's vice president pick is even harder over than Trump on Israel and his dislike of Iran. That may mean that Iran acts out in the coming months to try and beat Trump to the White House or to get its licks in while it can. The quasi-alliance of China and Russia was on display this week with a joint naval operation in the South China Sea. China deployed a destroyer, frigate, and replenishment ship for the joint patrol, while Russia sent a missile corvette. It's a small exercise in real terms, but part of a growing trend in the Pacific between the two countries. And Russia potential's intervention on China's side in disputes with Taiwan or in the South China Sea is a real headache for military planners in Washington and allied capitals. The Chinese Navy is about 355 warships strong, and that's one thing. But if you add Russia's Pacific Fleet of 46 more surface warships and auxiliaries and 11 submarines that seem to be operational at this point in time, it's a whole new equation for Western military planners. And in a war between the United States and China, Russia could tie down the South Korean and Japanese navies to aid China in a head-on fight with the United States. And last, kind of an interesting one, but satellite imagery that was reported this week, shared by a Russian language service of the U.S.-backed Radio Liberty outlet, showed a modern air defense system, Pantsir, installed on a tower approximately 2 miles from President Vladimir Putin's home in Valdai, Western Russia. It's reported that Putin has actually pulled in almost all of the regional air defense batteries that are available to protect his favorite house and estate. And this house allegedly also houses his lady friend. and that the air defense is to defend the site against Ukraine's long-range drone strikes. This is just the latest measure we've seen, actually, increased security measures around President Putin. First, it was a bulletproof vest, and then it was fighter escorts in Russian airspace, and now it's air defense systems around his homes. It's not only external threats that the Russian president has to worry about. We recently heard that Ukraine had attempted an assassination of Putin, maybe several, but security concerns for Putin could also come from within, particularly from the remnants of the Wagner Group and/or the military and security establishment, where there is a ongoing purge of people that are viewed by the president as not loyal and difficult, and/or who have failed the Russian state. I think other stories to watch this week includes the mysterious drowning of a North Korean official in Moscow, Iran threatening Israel at the United Nations, and the health concerns around President Xi and the third plenum of the Chinese Communist Party. Just of interest, North Korean official by the name of Kim Chol, visiting Russia, whose name matches that of the president of the Kim Il-sung Military University, was drowned while swimming in a pond outside Moscow. Keep in mind, people die mysteriously in Russia at the hands of Russian assassins and the Ukrainian assassins in Ukrainian special forces quite often. It's odd to see a North Korean official drowned outside of Moscow in mysterious circumstances. But it's worth noting that North Korea is supplying arms to Russia and threatening to send troops to assist Russia in rear areas. So the two may be related. In terms of Iran's acting foreign minister, his presence at the United Nations Security Council this week, we saw him make a number of threats to Israel. And the most interesting one was when he was quoted as saying, expanding the war to include Lebanon, Hezbollah, would be a serious miscalculation and would escalate matters in the region out of control. I warn against such a measure. Israeli invasion of Lebanon will be met with a strong and regrettable response from the international community, regional states, and resistance factions. And this threat of the UN Security Council was not taken well by the Israelis. And lastly, earlier this week, we saw unconfirmed reports that Chinese President Xi may have suffered a stroke at the third plenum of the Chinese Communist Party. And this is a session that would take them out about 10 years in economic planning. And the Chinese economy has been suffering some problems, and President Xi is suffering some internal pressure from the tried, tested, and true elements of the old Communist Party. And that laid out this week in rumors that he'd had a stroke. Photos today show the president appearing quite well and doing his thing at the last day of the sessions. And I think that the rumors probably were in the category of false news. But President Xi is older. It's worthwhile watching his health. And it's also worthwhile watching what happens coming out of this third plenum. And the interesting thing, just before I leave it, Josh, this week, is that there was an attempt by the Chinese government to portray President Xi as the successor of former great leader Deng Xiaoping, who opened up China at the tail end of the Cold War and was considered a great leader of that country. And that may be to protect him from the old hardliners of the Communist Party that are still embedded in the central machinations of the Chinese state.
Thank you, Joe, for your insightful analysis and for guiding us through this week's geopolitical developments. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week as we reconvene with Joe to delve into another week of global affairs.